At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Since 1962, the Sacramento Observer has been the publisher of record for the African American community in Sacramento. Each week for the past 50 years, the Observer has been a reassuring and constant presence in the life of Black Sacramento. The Observer has been the chronicler of births, achievements, unions, events, and the mournings for the Black community and beyond. This unique institution has served many roles: convener, critic, arbiter of disputes, and the catalyst of many of the events that have shaped and defined Sacramento. Its publishers, Dr. William and Catherine Lee, have been as constant in the community as entrepreneurs and as activists as the paper itself. As the Observer celebrates its golden anniversary, Dr. Lee and his son and successor, Larry Lee, join us to remember the past 50 years and share what's next for America's most decorated Black newspaper. Welcome, Larry. Welcome, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Glad to
Scott.
be here.
So, Dr. Lee, Larry,
Yes.
what does this milestone mean to you?
Well, it means a great deal because it gives us an opportunity actually to say thank you for all the years of support that we've had from our local readers and those who've supported us throughout the years. It also gives us a chance, frankly, to look back on some of the history that has occurred here and hopefully preserve that history in some form or another.
Yeah. This to me, I am really appreciative of this time to be able to have my dad around and to celebrate our 50th anniversary, where he's the longest active African American publisher in the state's history.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
No one has ever published a Black newspaper as long as my dad has and the family has.
And continuously.
Absolutely, and it's a tremendous opportunity to be able to have him here, to be able to sit at his footsteps and listen to the stories and the history and see the impact that the Observer has had and continues to have.
Now, I know that the full year is going to be a celebration,
Yes.
but November is the special month.
Yes.
What are we going to see in November?
Well, we're going to see an outstanding gala for sure.
Right.
We have had, over the years, in the various decades, we've had the 20th, the 30th, the 40th, and now the 50th. We've had some outstanding events, and our gala this time in November is going to be, we think, the epitome of what really an outstanding event, a kind of a red carpet event would be like here in Sacramento. So we're planning to have an array of entertainers, an array of historians to tell the story about some of the things that events have occurred in Sacramento over the years and things of that sort.
Yeah.
Let's actually talk about history for just a second. One of the things that I know that you've been wanting to do for years, and Larry, I know you've been really working hard on this, is a preservation project.
Absolutely.
What's that all about?
It's an exciting project that we're working on very closely. It's a regional project with the Sacramento History Foundation, and UC Davis is partnering up with us. What we're trying to do is make sure that we preserve our archives and the archives of Sacramento's contemporary African American history.
Give the folks that are joining us right now a sense of how many pictures you all have.
Millions.
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 And this
Millions of
is before digital photography, where you can just take forever pictures.
Oh, yeah.
These are really photographs.
Yeah, these are actual photographs.
Photographs, memorabilia, obviously publications as well too. You know, it's so often people come to us and they say they need to find our African American history, and we have to take time to find those things. Well, what we want to do is make sure that we have that so the region can find their own history.
And UC Davis has reached out and is going to partner with you on this project.
Yes.
That is really, really outstanding.
It's very exciting.
So let's go back in history. Let's go back 50 years. And when you and John Cole and Gino Gladden
Yes.
and Mrs. Lee all got together and founded this institution, what were you thinking? What were you trying to accomplish?
Well, it's amazing. We never would have thought that from a kitchen table in which we
Really?
worked the first edition out, from that beginning, that initiation, that we'd end up here 50 years later to talking about an outstanding paper that has been this nation's #1 African American newspaper a number of times. So we had no idea. The key there is that we wanted to serve those, Scott. That was our main intent. There was very little information. We feel now there was no marketplace of where a person could go and find out events in the African American community. And so our intent was really to provide that kind of information from events that were occurring, information about groups that might be forming, some of the deaths and births, if you will, of our community and that type of thing.
Well, give us a sense of the times, Dr. Lee, okay? Because this happened as part of an era.
Yes.
Tell us about what was going on at that moment. What was meaningful and relevant to you?
Well, you know, the culture of the times is that we really had very few African Americans in key positions, in any positions and so forth. There were no black judges, as an example, no blacks on television, no blacks, if you will, on our city council or in our board of supervisors, very few in the Capitol. In fact, we were looking at it the other day, and we felt when we reformed the Observer in '62 that there actually was only 3 African American staffers working in the state capitol.
You're kidding.
Can you imagine that?
Wow.
And, you know, so from that very first beginning, we were able to serve really kind of as a catalyst for many of these job opportunities, for many of the announcements that were occurring, for many of the appointments that were being made. And we were consulted frequently by those who are in positions to make some of those appointments.
Incidentally, in being a catalyst and breaking down doors, you didn't just do that in the African American community. There's a story that I recently heard about how publications like Time and Newsweek couldn't participate in the coverage of the Capitol, and the Observer broke down the door that allowed them to be able to be a part of the Bureau. Tell us that story.
We could not be credentialed, if you will, because we were not essentially, we met the Rules Committee requirement at that time is that you had to be a daily newspaper, as an example, in order to have a credential. So you couldn't get up and cover. So magazines like Time Magazine, who was not obviously a daily publication, nor were the Observer, could not be credentialed. So we, in a sense, we challenged that credentialing rule and was able to change the Rules Committee requirements at the time. And we were able then to open up the doors for many of the publications who were weeklies and other publications as well. So we pioneered in many of those kinds of efforts and actually assisted the Rules Committee in rewriting the rules as it applied to credentialed publications.
So back in that era, you have encountered over your time, and you have as well, Larry, just a plethora of historical figures.
Yes.
Who among them really stands out in your mind that were folks that you to this day you remember and you say, wow, that was really a person worth remembering? Well,
you know, it's so interesting because we had opportunities obviously to meet during that time. Everyone from the political leaders, actually the celebrities that were traveling.
Political leaders like who?
Political leaders like, you know, of course, all of our governors, that essentially beginning at that time from Pat Brown. My wife even went to work for Pat Brown for a short time, as an example, through Governor Reagan, through Duke Machen, through Young Brown, the current governor of our state.
Incidentally, Governor Reagan, President Reagan, used to come by the office in Oak Park?
Yes. Well, we established a real personal relationship with, at that time when he was governor of our state, with him, because not only were our kids going to the same school, Brookfield School, together, we were able to go to establish a working relationship with him. And as a result, when he got ready to name several appointments, he would come by and we would chat about some African Americans that were worthy of being named.
President Reagan in Oak Park.
Yeah, can you believe this? And of course, at that time he was governor.
Right.
But he later went on to be president of our state. And we really were influential, we think, and helpful to him when he got ready to name, as an example, the Federal Day for Dr. Martin Luther King, when he became president, as an example. Yeah, so he visited our area and was able to come by Oak Park, as were other governors as well.
Right, and in terms of celebrities, okay, who stands out in your mind?
Well, I think you have to have Muhammad Ali as one of the outstanding visitors, and we established a relationship with him as an example, an outstanding. We had a lot of fun together. We were able to Louis Armstrong, Satchmo Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong.
Absolutely. He also was one of the celebrities that visited.
What kind of guy was he?
Very jovial, very light, very outstanding in terms of his opinions about music and all. But we had a lot of fun with celebrities like those, and of course political people like. Kennedy, young Kennedy, of course, Bobby Kennedy, as well as Ted Kennedy as well.
Really? Now you have a special fondness for the recently departed Mervyn Dime Lee.
Yes.
Why did Mervyn Dime Lee have such an impact on you?
Well, mainly because Mervyn was the first. He actually was, we like to think of him as the godfather of African-American politics in California. He was absolutely he was the first actually to be elected from Southern California at the time. And he came in about 64. And he not only was an assemblyman, but he also went on to be state senator, the first African-American state senator. As
Lieutenant governor?
Lieutenant governor as well. And then later, obviously, went on to be to Congress.
But what did he do that was so
well, I think a number of things. He was a mentor for many of the politicians that followed him. Bill Green, who followed him as an example. Leon Ralph, who followed him from those districts in Southern California. Additionally, he authored many major important bills. Actually, one major bill that I think sticks in my mind that he authored is that he wanted to make sure that history was told right in the history books that were being at that time used by many of our students and youngsters. So Merv insisted upon an accuracy in terms of those kinds of dialogues and stories that were in the history books. But Merv was really very instrumental in so many other things as well. In all of those different political seats that he had, as an example, he made sure that African Americans were included. He made sure that in some way that the state of California reached out really
in things like business, and I want to cover that for a second, because Larry, you are running the paper and taking it into this new century, and I want to find out your reaction to something that I noticed, which is you all carry a lot of national advertising, GM, big national Fortune 500 companies. But the phenomenon is that I know that over the years, lots of folks in minority media say they can't get local people to purchase advertising. And the way that they look at it is this: the nationals, like big national corporations, see the market that you serve as a strategic market for opportunity. But local based businesses tend to send you to the charitable side and say, oh, it's this is a grant or something like that, and they don't see the viability of the business sector. Explain that to me, because I don't get it.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with education, lack of education. I think when you speak of it at the national level, at the large corporate level, obviously they get it. If you're in charge of a large corporation, you know and understand that reaching out to communities, underserved communities, communities of color, particularly in California, that's important to make sure that they have the messages.
But they always try to put it from a social perspective. But you're saying it's important from a business development and penetration.
Absolutely. I mean, if you ignore the communities of color in California, you're not going to be in business very long.
Okay, so let me just give you one anecdote. Okay, organization that I'm aware of. Okay. Wanted to do a lot of business with state employees, okay? Refused to do any investment in, minority media at all. Basically said that they could reach it by the mainstream publications and that sort of thing. And what they said was, well, our ad agency tells us what to do. So I went to the head of the ad agency, asked him the question, and he says, no, we do what the client tells us to do. But the fact of the matter is that they saw exploiting that sector, whether Hispanic, African American, Latino, whatever, as a throwaway that this is a charitable thing to get people off my back, or to say that we've checked a box. As a businessman and as chief executives, how does that change? How do you get people to take the business that's on the table they're waiting for?
Yeah, well, it's very frustrating. You know, in this post Prop 209 era, particularly in California, you have to be careful about mentioning race and color. But I know that there's constant effort to try and change legislation, to try and get people to be more, companies to be more aware, more inclusive of minority-owned media, and not just minority-focused media, but minority-owned media as well too. Because we're businesses in California, there's so many different voices throughout the state that they need to reach. And I don't know how to change that overnight other than the constant striving for excellence in the publications that we serve and serving our communities and making sure that they understand and recognize.
And how are you keeping the Observer relevant in a digital era? What are you doing?
Well, I feel excited about where we're headed in the digital space. You know, it's the legacy that we stand on is a quality print publication, and it has been second to none.
So print is not dead then?
Not dead at all, by any means. You know, I think that there will always be a need to be able to have that on record in a printed product. When people see themselves in a print newspaper, it's amazing the type of reaction that they get. I still get warm and goosebumps even to this day.
And people save them.
Yes, and they keep them for forever. But in the digital space, we have to meet people where they are. I think that's an important thing that we have to make sure that we do.
So what are you doing?
We, for instance, we send news to people on their cell phones via text messaging. We're the only African American newspaper in the country that does anything like that.
I get mine every day.
There we go. And then we also obviously have a website. We were one of the first African American newspapers really in the country to launch our website over 10 years ago, and are preparing to launch a tablet version as well too in the next few weeks.
Now, the New York Times, even the Sacramento Bee, as of recent, has gone to taking the plunge and doing a paywall so that they can start to harvest some of those dollars that folks like the Huffington Post rip off for free, right? Okay. Is the Observer going to go in that direction?
We have to monetize it. I think there definitely has to be a monetization of it, which has been the challenge. I think papers have been reluctant to put up paywalls because they feel like the traffic is going to leave. I think if you have quality content, relevant content that is important to people's lives, people will find a way to pay for it. And if you make it a price point that makes sense.
You know,
Dr. Lee,
it's one of the things just to add on to what Larry is saying as well. You know, this is really. Sacramento is such a diverse community, and the market is made up of different, I say, colors in the rainbow.
Sure.
And I'd like to say we're just one of the colors, and in order to impact 150,000 African Americans to reside in this region, as an example.
Representing how much in dollar value?
Roughly about $10 billion go through their hands each year. $10 billion a year.
So let me just take this point of personal privileges.
Yes.
So major advertisers, what you all need to know is this: if you're not harvesting part of your part of that $10 billion, you're missing out.
You're missing a big market, a huge market, as an example. And so it makes some sense, really. And the smart ones are doing that, exactly that. And you know, Sacramento's diversity didn't just happen. You know, it really was I think the beginning of many of the early founders who set forth a precedent in terms of how to, in fact, do business in our community as well. And a number of local establishments are, in fact,
Let's
doing
go
that.
back to founders, okay?
Yes.
Tell us about the contribution of Mrs. Lee.
It's been a major contribution. You know, she's been really the passion of this area. You know, communications is really a profession of passion, and she really loves this to communicate. She loves people. She's unfortunately been very sick, as you may know, over the last few years. But she's being felt in many ways. It's not a day that goes by that people are not inquiring about her and her health and that type. So our contribution has been really in the form of providing a kind of a motivation, giving us the courage to continue moving forward and all. And I look in our eyes each morning, each day, as an example, and it's a remotivation of the efforts that we want to make.
And your
in
other
this.
sons, Roddy and Larry, also
Oh,
have been involved over the
absolutely,
years
yeah.
as
It's
well.
been really a family, you know, and we build the paper not only around our family, but we also like to build it around a community of families as well.
Well, I got my own story on that. So when we moved to town, my family moved to town in '73. The first place that my father came in town was he found the black newspaper.
Yes.
He came down to the Observer. As usual, you all were working late at night.
Yes.
It was probably a Thursday night in '73,
Yes.
and I fell asleep on your couch.
Oh, my Lord.
You know, you offered me a can of soda, and Mrs. Lee gave me a piece of candy.
Yes.
And but it's that sort of being sort of the center of the community
Yes.
that the Observer has always been over
Yes.
the past 50 years.
And we continue to have that kind of a personal relationship with each of all of our readers, all of our clients as well.
I'm wearing the cufflinks today that my father wore on
Look
the
at
night
here.
that he came to your office back in
Bless your
1973.
heart, yes.
And you know, that sort of warm embrace and welcoming that the paper has always provided. How has that role changed today in this more sort of impersonal digital age?
Not very much. You know, it's interesting that many, and one quick story is that one top executive who's with a major firm, Fortune 500 company, as an example, recently told us the story as an example that when he got his appointment to head this Fortune 500 company, that he was telling the story to his mom and said, "Mom, my story is in today's Wall Street Journal. You ought to get a copy of it." And she said, "Oh, that's great. That's absolutely great. But honey, when is it going to be in the black press?" And that's where Mom was, you know.
Right.
So it hasn't changed that much, Scott. It really is a family publication, and it will continue to be that, I hope.
As a businessman and as entrepreneurs, I want to ask you, what advice, very quickly, because we're in our last few minutes, would you give young entrepreneurs today?
Well, I think really to study hard, to make sure that they get the basics of what the economies are about around the world, and certainly locally as well. Understand whatever their dream might be, and understand the marketplace they may want to go into, and research it well, and prepare themselves well. I think that's the main thing, is to be prepared.
So what is the state of Black Sacramento today, gentlemen?
Well, I mean, I think it's exciting. I will say this much. I think that there's a lot of disparities that impact the African American community, from education to health, wealth. There's a lot of challenges, but I think if you step back and look at the landscape that we have some tremendous people who are contributing to Sacramento in ways that we haven't been able to contribute.
Like, what are some of the milestones that you...
Well, for instance, I mean, you sit back and you look at people who've come from Sacramento, gone away, came back, people like Mayor Johnson. You know, to have an African American mayor, two-term African American mayor, here in Sacramento, who's really seems to be committed to trying to improve the condition of the African American experience. You've got people like Margaret Fortune, who's launching African American schools.
Who actually named a charter school after you, the
Yes.
William Lee School, which
William
is
Lee
a very fine college preparatory school.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I got a trick question for you. How many African Americans are on the city council?
4.
4?
Yes. We
Name
have
'em.
Mayor Johnson, newly elected Alan Warren, of course Bonnie Pinnell, and Kevin McCarty.
Most people don't realize it, do they?
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
That's why they should be reading the Observer. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I want to go to where it is that in the future, we've talked about 50 years of history. We've talked about the state of today. In our final moments, I'm going to ask you both to say, what's your vision, what's your hope for the African American community and the community in general 50 years from now? So Larry, we'll start with you.
If you don't mind. Yeah, I think it's, I'm encouraged. Again, along the lines of what I just kind of mentioned, I think that Sacramento has been, up until just recently, it's been the largest area where African Americans have been relocating here in California. We call it kind of a small Mecca of the West. And I think that there's an excitement and an energy that will propel us over the next generation or two. So I'm excited about where we're going. I think we have to be careful. We have to be very smart. But I think if we learn, we become more sophisticated. We've got an African American.
And if there's one thing we should focus on, what is it?
Education.
Education, excellence, and closing the education gap?
Absolutely.
All right.
It's critical.
Dr. Lee, you're going to take us home.
And I would add to that probably a great spirit of a desire to continue on. I really feel that sometimes we're missing in the courage to move forward on many of the challenges. When we face a barrier, we run away from it instead of being challenged by it. And really, I think those who don't understand really the community, we invite those to really to reach out to those sectors they don't understand. I think those limitations really will only hurt them in the long run, those who don't understand the diversity that's happening in our community. It's a warm community. As I said, it's a rainbow of different colors in our community, and it's an outstanding community, and it's been very helpful to us.
And if there's one thing that we should focus on, what is it?
Again, I would echo what Larry said about education. It's very important, but more than just as much as anything else is that talk to those mentors that they might have around them so that they can also get a sense of the struggle that they might be having to face and move forward with that.
Well, thank you. And part of what it is that you guys do is you identify the 30 under 30 who are coming up as the future leaders, and we continue to appreciate that.
Yes.
Gentlemen, we wish you well on your golden anniversary and 50 more years of prosperity and health to you both.
Thank you so much, Scott.
All right. And we look forward to seeing you all again.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show. Thanks to our guests, and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syfax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.